Hello and welcome to The World This Week with Anthony Baxter. A look at some of the biggest global news stories over the last 7 days for an international city, brought to you by the London Live News team. Tonight, tensions on the Korean Peninsula as the North claims to have carried out several successful ballistic missile tests, including one from a train. Counting the cost of Nicholas, Texas begins a massive cleanup operation after the tropical storm causes flooding across the state. And a new home for Afghan's women's football team. Members of the squad and their families have this week escaped the Taliban. The Islamist group are opposed to them playing their sport. All of that on the way before 7:30, but first, a diplomatic row emerged this week after the UK, America and Australia announced a new security pact. The agreement will see the three nations share technology and intelligence in what is widely reported to be a move to counter China. However, the alliance has led to France accusing the US president of stabbing it in the back. Let's take a look at the story in more detail.
Well, good morning from Australia. I'm very pleased to join two great friends of freedom and of Australia.
Well, late on Wednesday night, UK time, leaders of the new AUKUS pact held a joint virtual news conference confirming the historic security deal for the Asia-Pacific region.
Our world is becoming more complex, especially here in our region, the Indo-Pacific. This affects us all. The future of the Indo-Pacific will impact all our futures. To meet these challenges, to help deliver the security and stability our region needs, we must now take our partnership to a new level.
It will allow Australia to build nuclear-powered submarines for the first time using American technology, and that is the part which has angered France. The country had already agreed a deal with Australia to build 12 new diesel subs, a contract which has been scrapped. So what's in it for the UK?
This will be one of the most complex and technically demanding projects in the world, lasting for decades and requiring the most advanced technology. It will draw on the expertise that the UK has acquired over generations, dating back to the launch of the Royal Navy's first nuclear submarine over 60 years ago. And together with the other opportunities from AUKUS, creating hundreds of highly skilled jobs across the United Kingdom, including in Scotland, the north of England and the Midlands, taking forward this government's driving purpose of levelling up across the whole country.
Well, the UK government has said that China would be wrong to interpret the new military pact as an act of aggression. Beijing has called it irresponsible and a Cold War mentality. Well, the new subs and alliance will strengthen America's position in the region.
We need to be able to address both the current strategic environment in the region and how it may evolve, because the future of each of our nations, and indeed the world, depends on a free and open Indo-Pacific enduring and flourishing in the decades ahead.
Well, let's get more reaction then on this new pact from our regular political commentator, John Johnston from Politics Home. John, some publications going as far as describing this as the start of a new Cold War. What impact do you think this could have on international relations for the UK?
I think we've already seen quite a significant fallout from this announcement so far. The French, especially, absolutely furious at this deal. They were negotiating with Australia to come up with a plan to develop nuclear submarines. Up until, I think, a couple of months ago, there were still regular meetings happening between the two countries to discuss this. And they only learnt about this new deal, essentially, minutes before the press conference announcing it. So they've described this as a stab in the back, really quite an unprecedented response from the French about this. I think wider, China has said that this is possibly the start of a new Cold War. I don't think that's an unexpected response given, the kind of scale of what is now happening. But I think this is going to have massive implications. It's also going to have huge implications in Brussels. They really see this as them being cut out of the strategy in the Indo-Pacific. So we're going to have to see where this leads now. But it's certainly a very, very significant move by the UK, the US and Australia.
From a public-facing perspective, the Prime Minister pushing jobs here, does that outweigh the negatives? You know, three powers here essentially trying to muscle in on this part of the world. Boris Johnson offering the prospect of work here in the UK. Is that worth it?
I think there's certainly a feeling among his own colleagues that the UK needs to be making a much stronger stance on China. Obviously, this is something that was very unexpected. There had been rumours about it in the Australian press, but it wasn't something that was really on the cards either here or in the US. So I'm not sure. The response at the moment has been, I think, relatively positive. As with many things, foreign affairs stories like this don't seem to gain massive traction among the UK public. And I don't think maybe it was that unexpected. There has been a huge amount of pressure for the UK government to take a stronger line in Australia and the Indo-Pacific region to try and counter what they see as Chinese aggression.
OK, John, thank you. John Johnson there. Details of the AUKUS pact, which was announced this week. Well, let's head to the Korean Peninsula next, where tensions have built this week as the North demonstrated what it claimed was its military potential. These images claim to be a successful ballistic missile launch from a train, according to Pyongyang. Well, the Korean Central News Agency says the weapons system was tested in a mountainous part of the north and that the missile struck a target in the sea 500 miles away. State media showed what appeared to be two different missiles streaking up from railcar launchers surrounded by dense forest. South Korea and Japan confirmed the short-range missiles landed inside Japan's economic zone but outside its territorial waters. The last time a North Korean missile landed that close to the country was in October 2019. Well, hours after, South Korea reported that it had tested submarine-launched ballistic missiles. Texas and residents in Bay City were cleaning up after Tropical Storm Nicholas brought heavy rain and strong winds to the area. It was downgraded from a hurricane after making landfall in the early hours of Tuesday.
We had actually just got done praying. So I'm glad it went the other way instead of on top of the house. I was standing in the living room and I looked outside and I saw it fall. It scared me.
Hundreds of thousands of properties were left without power across Texas, while an emergency was declared in neighbouring Louisiana, still recovering from taking the full force of Hurricane Ida. At least 2 people were killed and dozens more injured after a powerful earthquake hit China's Sichuan province on Thursday. The magnitude 6 quake brought down buildings. The country's state TV said 60 people had been hurt, 3 badly. Rescue teams were seen searching through rubble to look for people who may have been trapped. Now, a month after the Taliban took control of Afghanistan, the country's women's football team and their families this week managed to escape. Under the Islamist group, women are not permitted to take part in sport because it could lead to their exposure. Well, last week, the Taliban announced an all-male interim government stacked with veterans of their hardline rule from the 1990s and the 20-year battle against the US-led coalition. Well, this footage from the Pakistan Football Federation shows a number of the footballers arriving in Lahore having crossed the border. They have been issued with emergency humanitarian visas following the Taliban takeover.
My daughters very love football and always play football. So the Taliban don't allow to play football for the women. So my daughter was worried about this. So I decided, my decision was they go out my daughters from the Afghanistan.
Well, following the collapse of the Afghan army and the chaotic evacuation from Kabul of foreign nationals, the EU unveiled new plans this week to help it react faster to similar situations in future. In a self-styled State of the European Union address, the Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the failure of the government and security forces in Kabul and their fall to Taliban insurgents raised troubling questions for the bloc and also for NATO, the military alliance between Europe, the UK, America and Canada.
Europe knows better than anyone else that if you don't deal in time with the crisis abroad, this crisis will come to you. Secondly, the nature of the threats we face is evolving rapidly, from hybrid to cyber attacks to the growing arms race in space. We see that disruptive technology has been the great equalizer in the way power can be used today by rogue states and non-state groups. You no longer need an army or missile to cause mass damage. You can paralyze industrial plants, city administrations and hospitals. All you need is your laptop.
The European Commission President in Strasbourg this week. Just time to show you these pictures before the break. The first major repair operation in 60 years got underway in Stonehenge in Wiltshire on Tuesday. Cracks and holes and what is arguably the world's most famous prehistoric monument will be repaired now after laser scans showed some of the lintel stones, those are the bits that go across the top, had eroded. Well, English Heritage, which manages the site, says the work will protect the stones going forward and that after 4,500 years of being buffeted by wind and rain, it was inevitable that the stones would need a little help to continue to stand the test of time on the Salisbury Plain. The work said to be going on for the next 2 weeks. This is The World This Week. It continues after the break. We'll have the moment that SpaceX's first private flight blasted off from Florida on Wednesday evening with 2 contestant winners on board and the first ever all-amateur space crew. Welcome back. You're watching The World This Week from London Live, a review of the main international stories that have broken over the last 7 days. Still to come before 7:30. Arguably the world's weirdest fashion moment of the year, the Met Gala took place in New York this week. We'll have highlights of who wore what. But first, this week saw the Prime Minister set out a winter COVID plan for England. Boris Johnson said he was determined to do all he could to avoid a lockdown, but he said that he was unable to rule out a return of such measures if there was a spike in hospitalisations. Well, let's just take a look at the winter plan in more detail. Speaking alongside his top COVID scientists, the PM outlined 2 strategies for dealing with COVID during the colder months. The first, stick to the current plan of vaccinating and offering boosters to the most vulnerable. The second, what the government will do if it fails to prevent the NHS from being overwhelmed. So on Plan A, people will be encouraged to meet outdoors, wear a mask in crowded or enclosed spaces. Businesses will be urged to use COVID passes to check vaccination statuses, and vaccines may become mandatory for care staff and NHS workers. It was also confirmed this week that people over the age of 50 will be offered a booster jab as well as a flu jab, and that those who are vulnerable will also be eligible for a 3rd dose of a COVID vaccine. So what happens if that's not enough? Well, that comes to Plan B, which includes work from home guidance. It could be reinstated. Vaccine passports could be introduced for places like nightclubs and other public spaces where crowds gather. Wearing a mask is likely to be made mandatory in shops, public transport and other public spaces. And lockdowns, as we've mentioned, haven't been ruled out. Let's move on to Russia next. It is holding 3 days of voting this weekend in a parliamentary election that is unlikely to change the country's political complexion. There's no expectation that United Russia, the party devoted to President Vladimir Putin, will lose its dominance of the elected lower house of parliament. However, the results could see the party lose its 2/3 majority that allows it to amend the constitution. Efforts are underway to try and save some of the world's biggest trees. Firefighters have been wrapping fire-resistant blankets around the sequoias of Giant Forest in California. Officials fear the blaze, which has been growing for around a week now, could reach General Sherman, the world's biggest tree by volume. It's also about 2,500 years old. Now, just a warning, we are about to show you images of animal slaughter which you might find upsetting. You certainly might not want younger viewers to see them. The pictures will be on screen for less than a minute. More than 1,400 white-side dolphins were killed this week as part of a 400-year-old tradition on the Faroe Islands in the North Atlantic between Scotland and Iceland. The act has once again, though, reignited the debate over hunting. Here are those pictures. The cull, not commercial and is allowed, but environmentalists and animal rights groups have expressed their condemnation. The dolphins are killed for their meat and blubber, and this year's hunt was far larger than previous ones. It appears to have taken place without the usual organisation, and islanders usually kill up to about 1,000 sea mammals annually. Last year, that included only 35 white-sided dolphins. The Sea Shepherd Conservation Society has described the events as an illegal hunt. China and 3 astronauts have touched down after completing the country's longest crewed space mission. The men spent 90 days on China's space station. They landed back on Earth at the Gobi Desert in Mongolia at around 5:30 UK time yesterday morning. They left for space on the 17th of June.
It feels very good to be back. It feels really great to fly into space. During our 3-month space journey, we completed a great number of space station construction tasks and many scientific experiments.
Well, staying with matters out of this world and to NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where the first private SpaceX flight left for orbit on Wednesday evening. Crowds gathered to see the rocket streak into the night sky with an all-amateur crew on board. No professional astronauts involved here. It's made up of a billionaire sponsor, a health professional and 2 prize winners. They've all trained for the last 6 months for the flight.
It's just interesting to see the 4 different people they got from different walks of life that they put together to combine in this one mission instead of just people that have trained together for years and years and years through the military to become astronauts. This is amazing. Well,
among the crew is a cancer survivor, and a key goal of the mission is to raise millions of dollars for a specialist hospital which treats children with life-threatening diseases.
It's just incredible what the mission in mind is to help people, and not just, nobody's going up there to show off. It's actually for a purpose, a wise purpose, and that is to improve people's health, and the money raised also contributes to helping people's health be restored and the cure of cancer, etc. I'm a cancer survivor, and so it's an amazing thing to be able to explore and find new cures for illnesses.
A couple who fought for their baby son to have the world's most expensive drug have spoken of their relief after his treatment began. Rosie Mae Walton and Wes Powell had been fundraising to try and take 16-month-old Marley to the States for the £1.8 million one-off Zolgensma drug, which can stop deterioration in patients with spinal muscular atrophy. But a landmark deal between the NHS and the US manufacturer involved has now made it available here in England.
Okay. Well, yeah, so if you feel comfortable mentioning it, but if not, don't worry, I know I don't want to make it work.
It's kind of like a weight off our shoulders in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, you just don't feel real sort of still.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but it
feels so surreal, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like it hasn't hit home yet that he's actually had it. It's such a surreal moment. That a drip is just so expensive and just work wonders. Yeah, it's just crazy considering all we've been through and the amount of like scares that you get put through with thinking that like your baby won't reach the age of 2 or a second birthday, and then to think like he's had this most expensive drug in the world. It's just crazy. Like, it's the best thing ever. It is.
Zolgensma is a breakthrough because it really is a miracle drug. Without Zolgensma, most children would have died. Now, A few years ago, a new treatment came along called nusinersen or Spinraza, and that medicine you have to have repeatedly and regularly injected straight into your spine, and that's not a pleasant procedure for the children or the families. Zolgensma is revolutionary because it actually affects the gene that's faulty, and you give it as a one-off infusion. You don't need to come back for repeated doses. It depends how old you are when you get it and how affected you've been. So if you treat children before they have symptoms, then we would hope that they would be able to sit up, stand, walk and lead full and active lives and be happy children. If you are getting it later and you have quite a lot of symptoms, you may not get as much benefit, but the ideal with Zolgensma is it will stop any further deterioration, and hopefully you'll get some improvement in your function and you will survive longer.
And finally, it's the fashion extravaganza that brings the best and perhaps the worst out in New York's A-list circle. The Met Gala, run by Vogue's Anna Wintour, returned this week for the first time since the pandemic. Let's just take a look then at who wore what, and we can raise an eyebrow or two as we do it. Here we are. This is singer Billie Eilish then first. She ditched her usual gothic appearance to channel old Hollywood in an Oscar de la Renta gown, the 19-year-old's first appearance at the ball. It was social media that had a ball with Kim Kardashian West's look. The reality star had posted images prior to her appearance having her makeup done. She clearly decided to take mask wearing to the next level. She certainly attempted to break the internet again. Her sister Kendall Jenner took an altogether different approach, the 25-year-old appearing in a see-through Givenchy number. Here's the woman of the hour, the London tennis sensation Emma Raducanu. She held back in New York, having won the Open, to give fans another chance to see her. And then came Lil Nas X, who was a little bit like a Russian doll, really. His outfits just kept on coming. There we go. That's all from the world this week with Anthony Baxter. Thanks for watching. We'll see you at 7 next Saturday as we round up the biggest international stories for a global city.